Welcome to Unlayered. I'm your host, Saul, joined by my co-host, Dave. And today we're here with the one and only Ansem, one of the bigger personalities on crypto Twitter. What's up, Z? How's it going?
Yo, what's good, guys? How you guys doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Getting towards the home stretch here of 2023. I think just right off the bat, I wonder, do you sleep, man? Like you're online all the time. You're posting. I think your posts per day is like insane. Like
Dude, no, I've not been sleeping. Bro, what happens to me during bull markets is like, like what the polyphasic sleep cycle.
yeah, like
You know that shit?
Uberman sleep and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
Like,
bro, I didn't know that was an actual thing that people did, but I like realized I was doing it last cycle. I would like sleep for 3 hours a night, like be looking at shit coins and shit all day, then like take a nap during the day and then just like get back to it. And somebody told me, I was like, nah, bro, the reason you're not tired is because you're just doing like you're sleeping in different cycles. Like your body is already tuned to doing that. So it doesn't really affect you all that much if you're used to it.
wow.
And honestly, when I was younger, I didn't sleep a ton, honestly, anyway. Like I've always been up more than the average person for some reason. But dude, I mean, the markets, all this volatility is going on. There's new shit coins launching every hour. So the more screen time you have, the more money you make, basically.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm always up.
And what would you say, like at this point, you're such a connected person in crypto. Maybe it's a bit different now, but I guess historically or even today, like what are your best sources of alpha? Is it literally on Twitter? Is it through private groups of Telegram? Are you just finding stuff fundamentally like, hey, this chart looks really good, let me dig into it?
Yeah, so I mean, last cycle, like the 2020, 2021 cycle, I didn't really have all that many groups that I was pulling alpha from. Most of it was just like I had a list of literally every ticker. It was on like what FTX at the time, FTX and Binance. But I had a list of all the altcoin tickers, and I was doing. I had like TA marked up on all of them, and like alerts set on a ton of them, and that was basically my go-to for like when I needed to get in and out of trades. I was doing that every single day, like charting a ton of fucking alts. And then on the fundamental side, I was just pulling a lot of stuff from Twitter, like from teams direct pages. Like I said, I use like Twitter lists and stuff like that. And last cycle I had Ansem, which didn't have that many followers, but I was journaling all my ideas on there. So every month I'll be like, these are my core positions. This is what I'm looking at for next month. This is what happened last month. These are some like news events coming up over the next few weeks. Like these are the different scenarios I'm looking at and how I'm going to play them. And I still do that now, but now it's like I have like way more access, I feel like, to information now that I didn't have before. Like every day my Telegram is just filled with messages from all different types of people. I'm like honestly having trouble keeping up with replying to people and then also trading, because it's like I could literally just have combos with people literally all day. But I'm trying to figure out how to balance that. Like I need to set aside some time to literally go through all my messages and shit now, because there's so many of them. But it's still the same thing. I have TA alerts and stuff, and then FA I do on the side. But most of it comes from Twitter. Like that's where I live at. So I'm always on. People are like, dude, how are you working if you're on Twitter all the time? But it's like that is my work. Like I'm reading stuff at the same time that I'm tweeting. I'm tweeting out ideas. I'm asking people what they think on stuff. And all the retail sentiment is on Twitter. So it's all right there in the same place for me.
For sure.
It's like a stock trading floor, but online.
I think it's fair to say that the current meme coin craze going on Solana, I mean, it's absolutely exploding at the moment. Things are doing sort of 10,000x in a day. Do you think this is sort of regurgitating what we've seen before on Ethereum? Or do you think there is something new here, something fundamentally different?
Yeah, I think it is a regurgitation, but the key here with Solana, I'll say it's two things. So earlier this year, I thought we were going to have a Solana DeFi resurgence at some point, just because last cycle, all the Solana alts did terribly. Like they had super high FTVs, weren't in touch with the community, barely launched any actual protocols that people were using, and just wrecked retail. The sole coin at just Solana was the only thing that really did well in that ecosystem. And then this cycle, I saw that there were a lot of DeFi teams that had been working over the past couple of years, past year or so. None of them had tokens yet. I'm assuming at some point these teams are going to start launching tokens. If you have that group of people looking to farm these airdrops, and then they see how much better Solana's UX is compared to these other chains, that can be a super reflexive thing. That just can spiral really quickly. And that was my thesis earlier this year, and it's starting to play out now. So I think it is a part of that. Like, this is Solana's first DeFi real moment. But the cool thing is for Solana is that people are realizing you can do a lot of things on Sol that you can't do on ETH because of how cheap and how fast it is. When you're aping shitcoins on Ethereum, you got to calculate how much you're going to be spending on gas if stuff is spiking or if the chain is congested. Whereas on Solana, I've literally seen people dollar cost average $10, $10 into memes, DeFi plays, like all the alts on chain, because you can do it at for under a penny per transaction. I want to say it's less than a tenth of a penny per transaction. So a lot of the ETH guys are seeing that. Before, they didn't really care about testing the chain because there was nothing to trade. And if there's nothing to trade there, then it's like, okay, what am I doing? I'm sending Solana back and forth to myself or to my friends. But like, if there's nothing to trade, you don't really get to see the full experience. And I think that's happening now. And that's why you have so much volume. Like Solana DEX volumes flipped ETH for the first time ever a few days ago, which is crazy. And I think that's going to be an ongoing trend. You're going to have people who are in crypto or on ETH or other chains. They're going to experience Solana for the first time and be like, oh, this is worth using in addition to whatever else I'm using. And then you have all these new retail people, and they don't care which chain, what means what. They're just going to use the best apps. So I think Solana benefits from that in a big way also.
So I agree with you. And that's a thesis we had here on the pod too earlier this year, which is a lot of DeFi teams building, tokens are going to come soon, and then that'll maybe create a wealth effect. And over time, people will use Solana. But were you expecting all this to happen? So I guess soon or suddenly? Like, it's just insane.
No.
There's literally not yet anything to allocate into. Jupiter just came out. They had a gigantic FDV, and there's still a bunch of tokens to be released. What do you make of this recent mania around that ecosystem?
Man, I didn't expect it at all. I thought Q4 was going to be slow. I thought we were going to probably chop around with all the FTX estate selling that we had. That was supposed to happen in Q4. That's what I was expecting. And I was like, in Q1, that's probably when stuff will rip. And literally right after they announced the FTX estate sales and Galaxy, I think they staked most of the SOL that they had. And then everybody was caught off sides because everybody was short thinking it was going to go down. And you had a ton of people who were waiting to fill positions like, oh, I have time. And at that point, it was just like, it just ripped because everybody was off sides. And at the same time that it ripped was the same time that these DeFi teams started dropping tokens. So it was just like a lot of stuff that happened all at the same time. But I did not expect Bonk to go to 2 billion or whatever it is now, 1.5 billion. And then there's all these meme coins launching now, like just how it happened on Uniswap on ETH's DeFi summer in 2020. It was like a new launch every single day, and the group chat was going nuts every single day on Telegram. I remember that back in the day. In 2020, everybody was hyped, and you feel that same energy now, where everybody's like nonstop looking for new launches to ape into. And it's kind of like a precursor for what I think the bull market is going to look like 2024, 2025. Because right now it's us. There's some people outside of crypto who joined this year, but for the most part, people are not really talking about crypto all that much right now. So if we do get that spot Bitcoin ETF approval, which we'll likely get in January, after that happens, I think you're going to get a lot more attention on crypto too. And then if we break all-time highs, which is usually the signal for people to be like, oh, I missed out on crypto again, now I'm going to start buying. So we haven't had either of those things happen yet, which is why I think like the next couple of years are going to be crazy. Because we're like just starting basically on the attention side of things. We're really just starting for crypto.
It really feels that if you're going to bootstrap like a DeFi ecosystem and have loads of coins and loads of TVL on the platform, it does kind of feel like meme coins, shit coins are the way to go, because you can just launch, 10,000 a day. They can shoot up to billions of dollars, as we're seeing market cap, for basically no work. and then that can sort of bring everyone over. So it really does feel that that is the way that if DeFi is going to become huge on Sol, that it is likely to start with meme coins. I think the other big driver was the Jito airdrop, because not only was it a lot of money, it was also to less than 10,000 wallets. And surely that
Yep.
just showed like the whole industry that this is massively underallocated and there's a huge amount of money coming in. Yes. What importance do you think the airdrops are going to have, and probably particular attention on Jupiter airdrop? How do you think that's going to go?
Man, I think they're going to be huge. The reason that Jito airdrop was so big also was because they prioritize all the smaller wallets. So it was 10,000 users, but even it was much more efficient to be staking like 1 or 2 SOL for a longer period of time than somebody who was farming with like millions, which is really good for the ecosystem because it wasn't Cybelled all that hard. If it was a Cybelled airdrop where it was like a few people with thousands of addresses, then if you do that, if you do the airdrop and you incentivize the smaller users in that scenario, then you're not really doing a good job, because if it was Cybelled like that, but it wasn't Cybelled because nobody really was carried about Solana at the time. So the people who got those airdrops were really the diehard Solana community members, and typically were not whales. So after they got all this gas, now they have cash to spend in the ecosystem, and they're likely not going anywhere else. Right. If you spent all this time on Solana before it was consensus that the chain is good to use and worth using, you're probably not going anywhere now that you just have more capital on chain to play around with. So I think that all that money is likely to stay in Solana DeFi and stay on the chain. And I think it will be similar with Jupiter, which is coming up. That's going to be a huge one. A lot of people have been yelling Jupiter's praises from like the rooftops, comparing it to Uniswap and 1inch. It's just a really good product as an aggregator. And they're also, I believe, working on, I know they just launched perps, and they're also working on like a launch pad to launch tokens. So that's going to be a monster. I think it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar protocol for sure this bull market. And they're doing 40% of the entire supply to the community in 4 different rounds. So this first round is 10%. And I want to say it's trading around 0.5, like 50 cents or some 50, 60 cents.
Hit 70. So yeah,
hit 70. Yeah. So 70 cents, which would be what, a $700 million stimulus package to Solana traders on top of all the meme coin stuff that's happening. That's why I get confused when people say we can't see the amount of craziness that we saw in 2020, 2021. But we're gonna have the exact same type of setup, and with even more people joining in the market. So but that's gonna be what, 700 million, and then there's gonna be multiple rounds. So it also incentivizes people who aren't even on Solana now to continue using Jupiter in the future and moving forward. And then there's other stuff like Camino, I think MarginFi, Zeta Markets, Drift, Meteora, like Parcel is also doing points programs. Like there's a ton of different strong Solana teams that still don't have tokens. And now that the meme coins are moving, people have a reason to come over and trade. And while they're doing all this trading, they also get to check out all these different protocols that still are pre-token. So I think it's just going to be even more reflexive than it is already, honestly.
So while we're on the topic of Solana, what about the underlying liquidity for Jupiter, like Orca, Radium, or some of these new dexes? Do you think those are something worth looking at in terms of a play? I mean, they're making pretty good revenue. I think Orca's certainly, like, the market cap's gone up a decent amount just with all this mania, but I think that's being a bit overlooked by people who are just kind of over-indexing on the fact that Jupiter's aggregating all this order flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly am not sure which like dex plays I want to do. I know that a lot of the money from these meme coins, whenever they do top out, I'm thinking sometime in January. I think that those profits will flow into the stronger protocol. So stuff like Orca, what else? Like Radium, like all those, the DeFi teams, like Jito, stuff like that. I think those are gonna get kind of that rotational flow of capital once meme coins do top out. Okay. One of the ones that's interesting actually is Lifinity. Lifinity, I think it's called Lifinity Protocol. Yeah. They're like probably the most capital efficient DEX, I want to say.
Yeah.
So they're a lot smaller than Orca, but they do like a comparative amount of volume with a lot less liquidity just because of how their design works. That's a pretty cool protocol. So I've been thinking about looking at that. That, and then also I think Metaplex is interesting. So they have they're basically like a monopoly on all the NFTs, the NFT ecosystem in Solana. Everything goes through them. And I think compressed NFTs are going to be a huge narrative for Solana this cycle because you can mint millions of NFTs for like hundreds of dollars. Whereas if you try to mint millions of NFTs on Ethereum, it doesn't even really make sense to do because of the cost. But with compression, you can do this on Solana for like super, super cheap. And Metaplex is at the core of that. That's like another really strong team on Sol that I think probably does well. But just generally, I do think it's going to be like the money flow from memes to the real protocols. That's typically how it works.
I wanted to kind of get into, I guess, what you're kind of alluding to it now, what you're excited about in the next year. It sounds like you think this meme coin season will at least have a local maxima. There'll be some rotation. But ecosystem wise, man, what's the deal with this Dragon Ball Z say thing? I mean,
dude, so bro, my favorite thing about crypto is playing these rotations from like L1 to L1 to L1. Last cycle was kind of like the first time you saw it, and because it was the first DeFi cycle we had, and then DeFi popped off on Ethereum. And every other chain was like, okay, well, we can make our own DEX, we can make our own NFT, we can do our own whatever. So all of this capital is sloshing around in crypto, bridging from chain to chain, buying like all these new launches on different places. But what typically happens in crypto is these L1s build their infrastructure first, and it takes a long time to build out the infrastructure because building blockchains is not an easy task to do. So they have all the tech, but then it's like there's nothing to do on the chain. you have these L1s who raise like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yep.
They build out all the infra underneath, and then it's just like free, like open season for app developers to build whatever they want on chain. And at the same time as they go to mainnet, and you have traders looking for new stuff to ape. So the confluence of those things, when that happens, that's why you see these rotations happen on all the new chains, because there's literally nothing there, but they have so much money that these new protocols are going to get funded, and traders know that, and they want to get a piece of that early by being one of the earliest people to use the new stuff on chain. So yeah, I was talking about Say. I think Say is interesting. It's a Cosmos chain. They're working on building out a parallelized EVM on top of their current I think Rust architecture. It's built on top of the Cosmos SDK. They made some tweaks to their consensus algo for it to be faster than a lot of the other chains. I think their claims are to be like the fastest time to finality right now, and they're claiming to be able to do as much TPS as Sol can do. And we'll see how true that is as these protocols launch on top of it. But that's the thesis behind Say. It's like as fast as Solana, but it's a Cosmos chain, and it's one of the newer L1s that also raise a ton of money. So if you have all these memes popping up on Sol, you saw AVAX had whatever, I think it's Cockanu, just popped off, went to like 200 million. Then you have Huawei and Cosmos, which went to like 100 million. So these new chains are like, okay, what's the meme going to be on Say, or what's the meme going to be on Injective, or what's the meme going to be on these other L1s before these DeFi protocols launch? And they put a poll out today, and it was like, should we be sailors or should we be
oh man,
or Saiyans? And I'm like, bro, Saiyans is way better than sailors. Like, well, that's Saiyans is way better than sailors.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist yet. So it's like now I'm assuming somebody's gonna do it. Somebody's gonna make a meme of either sailors or Saiyans or something, because there's nothing really to ape on Say right now. I have funds there, but it's like there's nothing to buy. Like,
that is actually brilliant.
So yeah.
I think what's definitely missing from all the narratives at the moment, as you say, Injective, Monad going to be releasing next year. The thing that's missing is Ethereum. What is Ethereum's catalyst right now? Because I mean, it's flipped literally in like the space of about a month or two, to being full consensus. This is where all future trading is going to happen. Everything's going to settle on Ethereum, to now, everything is happening on these parallelized alt chains. So what exactly is going to be happening with Ethereum, do you think, during this next bull market?
Man, I wish I knew. The clarity I have on Ethereum's pivot from monolithic architecture to modular, and I've been saying this since early 2022. In my head, previously everything was happening on ETH mainnet execution, like whatever. They weren't using any other chains.
Yeah.
So it's easy to use ETH BTC as a gauge for how Ethereum's performing compared to Bitcoin, and then also to other altcoins, because it was just ETH. Now you have like 10 different L2s. All of them have their own tokens. They also all have different VCs backing them, so they're incentivized for these tokens to do well. They want their L2 to be the best L2. On top of that, you also have competing data availability layers. So you have Celestia, which is focused purely on DA. I know right now it would be cheaper to post your data to Celestia rather than to post it to ETH. And we'll see what those costs look like after EIP 4844, I want to say. Once that is done, we'll see what the costs look like after. But then there's also Near, which is working on data availability. There's also, I want to say, Polygon Avail, which is working on something similar. Eigenlayer is also working on something similar. So Ethereum has a scenario now where they're kind of competing. I don't want to say competing, but if you grow the ETH ecosystem, it's like what parts of it grows first in my head. So it's like before, say one of the L2s does really well and it's like the best execution layer. Are people going to buy the L2 token, or are they going to buy ETH? And if all the execution is happening on this L2, are all the users and traders over there, are they going to be more likely to buy that L2 token, or are they going to be more likely to buy ETH? And then you also have, if execution moves off of ETH mainnet, as execution moves off of ETH mainnet, the fees are going to go down, which means the burn is also going to go down. So in that gap of time where you have more activity on rollups and less activity on mainnet, until the activity on rollups is like 100x the amount that was previously on mainnet, the fee burn, like the fees, the burn, everything on ETH is going to go down. So that thesis around ultrasound money in the interim, in the short term, is also going to get hit a bit. So it's like, how much, or what is the value of Ethereum if it's purely a settlement layer that's also not being used for DA and not being used for execution? And I have no idea what that looks like. That's like why, like, it's just unclear to me how the value gets distributed across the ecosystem. And I've been saying that for a while. It's like you have Solana, where everything, like their focus is purely on doing everything on the main chain fast as possible at the speed of light, whatever, integrated L1. And then you have ETH, which is kind of focused on just being a settlement layer. But in the future, if Solana wanted to, they also could implement rollups and implement L2s if necessary, if need be. They don't have to at this point in time, but in my head, that gap between ETH and Sol is always going to have to close if the UX on Sol is better and it's faster and it's cheaper and you can do everything on Solana instead of needing to use different L2s to function. So I just think that that gap is going to close. That's my main thesis for this cycle, but I have no idea what ETH is going to go to.
Yeah, I think you did a few tweets where you had like some, I guess, price targets, and one of them was like ETH to 10K. Is that still in play? I think people are kind of too negative on ETH lately. Like Eigenlayer just crossed 800 million in TVL, I think, earlier today, after increasing the caps. Theoretically, some of these L2s that settle on Celestia, like their fees will go down to 3 cents, and it could be even lower, to your point, once dank sharding or proto dank sharding's out. So that gets you pretty close-ish to the cheapness of Solana. It's not quite there, but I feel like there are some tailwinds coming next year. So, with that in mind, are we kind of overly bearish ETH, or are these parallelized, L1s just that much better?
I do think people are overly bearish ETH right now. I mean, I'm actually long ETH right now for the first time in a very, very long time. I do think people are overly bearish ETH. Like I don't think Ethereum is going anywhere. I don't think it's gonna die out. And I think that Bitcoin and Ethereum are always gonna be the first things that these what's the word, like institutions and people outside of crypto with like a ton of capital. I think ETH and BTC are by far and away the first things they're going to buy. Like they're the most secure, they're the oldest coins. Ethereum moves very slow with its development purely for because they know that they focus more on security than anything else. And I don't think that's going to change moving forward. So yeah, I mean, I don't think ETH is dead. I think that's silly for people to say that, but I just don't think it has as much upside as like Solana, some other things. But yeah, I don't think it's dead.
You mentioned security, and actually that brings up a thought in my mind. I think this week you've been having a couple of arguments on Twitter about the hacks, the recent ETH-based EVM hacks. And I think do you want to put your position forward? Is EVM more risky, if you like, than some of these other virtual machines? Is it about the same? How are you viewing all of that?
Yeah, I've been arguing with people this week on this. I don't want to comment on it too much because I will say I'm not a blockchain developer and I haven't built things on EVM versus the SVM versus in the Cosmos. So like speaking from a developer's perspective, I can't do that. But I think that it's clear that from a user perspective, that the security associated with smart contract risk is just as important as the security associated with like chain security, and like the distribution of validators and how resistant it is to some outside entity attacking the chain. And I think that smart contract risks are actually much more important for these new users of all these ecosystems. So that's why I say people always say, oh, Ethereum's more secure than every other L1 by like a long shot. I don't necessarily think that's true because to users, it's the same thing. Like you lose just as much using ETH DeFi or like ETH, like playing around with ETH NFTs, like all these different protocols on ETH as you do on Solana, as you do on AVAX, as you do on all these other L1s. And it's more on Ethereum just because there's more capital there. But I don't think there's less risk associated from the user perspective with using ETH. That was my main point. And people were like, you don't know the difference between smart contract risk and chain security. I'm like, I know they're different things, but practically from a user perspective, I just don't think it's true that ETH is more secure than other L1s. So that's why I said that.
Whereas how much money have people lost from, validators colluding and trying to steal it? Yeah. So
Zero.
It's all smart contract risk.
It's all in theory. It's like, oh well, in theory, you can run a node on your Raspberry Pi. That means the ETH is more secure. I'm like, dude, we have a ton of the ETH validators are literally in AWS.
Yeah.
Like that it's if we want to be honest about if multiple nation states wanted to be like, you can't use Ethereum, I think that a lot of the biggest ETH applications that are like user facing would literally just shut down a ton of stuff. I don't think we are in a state right now where we're that resistant to nation state attacks. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be pushing towards that. I think that we should. I think that's one of the main focal points of crypto in general, but I don't think we're there yet. So I just think the claims that ETH is more secure for that reason solely, I don't think they're accurate. That was my main point.
Yeah. I mean, it's just always just funny, like post the merge, we had that whole thing with ETH blocks being OFAC compliant, and that's literally like an example of a centralizing vector complying to regulations, and that happened on ETH. So they have their own set of issues in that front too.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, what are y'all talking about? I'm here every day. I see what's happening here every day. Yeah. You can't just make up stuff to me because I'm here all the time. But yeah.
What about like thematically? Are there any, for instance, like one thing that was obvious last cycle is like gaming tokens were most people's best trade. Like Axie step in, a lot of funds return the whole fund on that.
Mhm.
What are you looking at thematically? Like, are you looking at gaming tokens? Are you looking at, I don't know, DeFi, NFTs? Like, what's exciting you? Where do you think the biggest opportunities are? Because at least from my perspective, I think the ones that retail can at least understand and use tend to have the most pumpability and ability to just hit really crazy market caps. But how are you seeing this all play out in the next year or two?
Yeah, there's a few I'm looking at. For games specifically, I think this cycle we're gonna have just a lot better games. So previously, game five was an idea and a thesis, and I think it will play out. But last cycle, we were just super early. So a lot of the games that were the biggest ones didn't really have years of development under their belt, and they were just like the first iteration of all these things. So this cycle, we've had games that have been building for like whatever 3 years now,
Mhm.
had a ton of funding raised last cycle, may have launched like some NFT collections and some stuff last cycle, but have been building the game for years. And what people don't realize is games take a long time. Well, good games take a long time to be built. And I think this cycle is when we'll see actual good, solid crypto games that people have been taking the time to build behind the scenes. So I do think Game Five is going to look different than it did last cycle. Um, yeah, it's like one of my theses, and that's also easy for retail to get behind. Like gaming and crypto, I think it's just an easy sell. Um, Also, I think DePIN, which is like decentralized physical infrastructure and real world assets, that's going to be a big one. I TradFi is going to eat that up from every different angle. I'm fairly certain that's something
Yeah.
that they understand. And if you can convey why, like what the advantage are of having certain assets on chain, or being able to have these distributed architectures globally, like coordination with a ton of different people, stuff like Helium, stuff like Hive Mapper, a lot of those different DePIN plays I think are going to be really cool, especially because a lot of them have established partnerships with Web2 entities already. Like Helium has a T-Mobile partnership, so that's stamp of approval from like an actual cell carrier globally. I think is big, and that's acknowledgement of that. That what's that word? Like that narrative in crypto. I think that's acknowledgement that that's going to be a thing that's going to stick around for a while. And then I think AI is going to be big. Honestly, I wish I had a cogent way to describe what exactly I think it's going to look like. I'm pretty confident that we're going to have some type of crazy AI X crypto bubble, because they're both the newest, hottest things right now that everybody's talking about. Somebody's going to figure out a way to use crypto in an efficient way, to work with these AI teams and like this artificial intelligence movement. I think there's going to be some alignment there. Some of the interesting ways I've seen teams think about it is using extra GPU compute for the training of these, like training and inference of these AI models on the back end, and just coordinating them through one chain or through a protocol on one chain. And doing the incentives through like a token. I think that could be cool. There's a few different teams doing that. But yeah, I don't. The AI one that's one I'm trying to figure out. Like I don't know what that looks like, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be some. There's going to be something in the top 10 that's AI X crypto.
Yeah, I agree, and it's super hard. We had Render on actually a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I think what those guys are building, the sort of the history of that team is incredible. But something has to come out from the AI industry, you feel. And
Yeah.
all the AI bots, and also there's this talk about AI agents using blockchains
Yeah.
to interact with each other. So I mean, it could just be that the L1s themselves are the
Yeah.
beneficiaries. I mean, just on that thought, do you think that there is a chance that the layer ones are going to end up being a bit like when the railroads came along? Everyone was building railroads, trying to make money from them, and then eventually they sort of all lost money. Do you think there's a chance that the layer ones become a bit like that and just compete each other into the ground, and and in the end they aren't actually worth a huge amount of money, and it's just these applications which are going to be built upon them, which are going to be the true behemoths?
I guess I agree and disagree with that. I think that a lot of the L1s are going to fail. So I don't think there's going to be a ton of L1s that are really successful. I'm confident that Solana is going to be one of the ones that is successful. And I think there's only going to be a few of them that survive long term. Long term for me, I don't really see any L1 that's purely the EVM in its current state surviving long term in crypto. It's either going to have to be something like Monad, where they're working on a ton of different optimizations behind the scenes to make it as fast as something like Solana. They're literally like basically redoing the entire EVM and a ton of other things to make it be able to handle over 10,000 transactions per second. But any L1 that can only do 10 TPS and spikes fees at like consistently for users, I don't think that's going to be, that's not the end state for crypto. So I think on one hand, you're going to have a few L1s that do really well, and protocols are going to be able to deploy on those chains. And then on the other side of that, you're going to have application-specific teams, like whether those are rollups, application-specific rollups, or those application-specific chains, like Cosmos chain, something like that. I do think the biggest applications that really want their own chain or want their own rollup, I do think that's going to be another thing moving forward, that they just don't want to be, they don't want to be on an L1 with a ton of other different protocols. And I think it makes the most sense for games. That's like one clear use case for me. There's no real reason that you need a game on the same chain as you have your lending borrowing protocol, trading, like your decentralized per protocol, like all these other like NFT trading. It makes sense for me to the game, which is its own ecosystem and kind of like its own circular economy, should have its own chain. And that's like what the AVAX guys have been pushing a ton with subnets. They're like, games make a ton of sense for subnets because you can do whatever optimizations you want on those chains specific to the game and like tailor it to your users. So I do think it's going to be two things. You're going to have a few L1s that do really well. And then on the opposite side, you're going to have application specific, either chains or rollups that want, I guess, their own independence.
So during this discussion we're just having now, it reminded me of one of the biggest surprises to me this past year, which was just the absolute explosion of ordinals, not just on Bitcoin, but every single chain is just getting knocked out by these things. And it feels so similar to me to NFTs last cycle early on, and even just ERC20s in 2017. Like they felt stupid. Like, why are people trading these things? Why are they breaking everything? And I wonder now, like, are these going to become a thing, like with, you know, retail at scale? Like, is that the next like primitive, like speculative primitive that's going to pop off? It feels increasingly hard to write them off as these
bro,
things just keep popping off.
Bro, that was my first reaction too. I was like, this makes no sense. Why are y'all doing this? why are y'all trying to make altcoins on Bitcoin, bro? We have Ethereum and we have Solana. We have altcoins. Like, why are y'all trying to do this? And then in my head, I was like, well, that probably means I should look at this more. probably means I should look more into this. I think inscriptions and ordinals are cool. I think really they only really make sense though on chains where you already don't have smart contract functionality.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no reason that you need to do inscriptions on ETH. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But doing inscriptions on something like Bitcoin, I think that's interesting. And I do think there will be some of those collections that hold long-term value. Bitcoin as the largest cryptocurrency, by far the best one for provenance. Like that's the reason that CryptoPunks were really big on ETH, because they were like the first NFT, one of the earliest ones on ETH, like the provenance there. And you have the same thing with these early inscriptions on Bitcoin that I think will behave in the same way, just because of that's like Bitcoin's thing. Like it's purely oldest, like most secure, like it's just the store value. And inscriptions make sense there. But what's interesting that I didn't think about, so somebody tweeted, I think it was Stoic tweeted, like, who is making inscriptions on Celestia? Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And I was scrolling the timeline. I'm like, what the fuck? Inscriptions on Celestia? My initial reaction was like, dude, Celestia doesn't even have smart contracts. Like, what do you mean you don't have inscriptions on Celestia? And then Mustafa like quote tweeted and dunked on me. And bro was like, he's like, actually, data inscriptions make perfect sense for Celestia because of that reason. Like that's all you can do on Celestia is post data. That's literally all you can do on Celestia is post data. So he's like, actually, inscriptions make a ton of sense on Celestia. That's an interesting one too, because Celestia is never going to have altcoins.
Yeah.
They're never
Oh,
going to have
God.
alts. Like they're going to have rollups that deploy on Celestia, and they can have inscriptions. So that's like the first inscription project on Celestia launched, I want to say a few days ago. I feel like that's something I should definitely buy. I haven't bought any yet, but like that's something I think I should buy. But it was so funny because I tweeted it and I was like with mad like laughing my ass off, like hella O's. And I wake up and the founder's like, well, actually,
Yeah. Bro, that's a retcon if I've ever heard one, dude. There's no way this dude was planning on inscriptions being a thing on Celestia. It's like, oh, you know what?
no, that's what I was. It's like, what? Yeah.
But now that you explain it that way, it actually does kind of make sense.
I know. I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. But yes, please stop, bro. Stop doing inscriptions on shit like AVAX. You're like, why are you doing that? Stop doing that.
You're not a fan of the $400 gas fees, bro? Like,
no, I'm not. I want to trade altcoins. Like, let me trade the altcoins.
I often wonder about this cycle. I feel like everyone is assuming it's going to be exactly like the last cycles. We're going to hit the halvening day and, suddenly everything's going to rip and it's going to go for about 12 to 18 months. And yet at the same time, we have started earlier, I would say, than we were all expecting, as we were discussing earlier in this episode. Do you think that maybe this cycle is actually going to be different? Because you know how the market loves to push against any consensus view. And it feels like this is probably the most consensus view, that 12 to 18 months, everyone sell. Is that how it's going to turn out, do you think?
I try not to have a strong thesis on what the top and price targets are going to look like, because I know that's going to fuck me up. I'd honestly rather respond to price action in real time. I really hate giving price targets because I know it'll, like, in my head, it's not even really whether you're right or wrong. It's more so like mentally, if I think this is going to $100 and then it goes to $90, and I'm like, no, I know it's going to go to $100, and then I don't sell. Like, it's going to fuck me up. And that fucks up a lot of people. So just generally, I think having price, like hard price targets in crypto or time frames in crypto is bad. It's just bad for markets in general. But the way I've been thinking about this upcoming cycle, and I've said this a lot, is that it's the last cycle where crypto is going to be a fringe idea for somebody who has no idea what crypto is. So after this cycle, well, I want to say previous cycles, you've always had that group of people who are like, crypto's a scam, crypto's not worth anything, there's no use in any of these protocols, and it dies a little bit cycle after cycle. But I think after, and they and honestly, a lot of the time they have good reasons for it. Like if you have stuff like FTX, SBF, previous we had a ton of ICOs that went to zero. Like previous one we had whatever, I don't know how many altcoins in 2014 were literally like just scams, pure scams. So a lot of people had reasons to think that about crypto, not really seeing the underlying fundamental value of the space. It's difficult to see if you don't take the time to do your research on your own. But this next cycle, if we do get this BlackRock ETF approval, and then they stamp Bitcoin as like, this is safe for anybody to buy, anybody to allocate to, you're going to have a ton of boomers who already have real estate, they have gold, they have stocks, they have, well, like all those other assets. They're going to start buying Bitcoin, whether that's like 0.5%, 1% of their portfolio. They're going to start allocating to Bitcoin. And I think once you have Bitcoin in their heads as a viable asset to like invest in, that opens the door for the rest of crypto to also be those type of assets comparable to stocks, which is why this next cycle, I don't think it's going to be the last cycle where we bottom under $1 trillion. Like wherever next bear is, it's still going to be multi-trillion-dollar asset class. And when you're a multi-trillion-dollar asset class, it's like we're not really that early anymore. People say we're not early now. I think we're still relatively early because we've only had DeFi for one cycle, and there's not really that many other, I want to say, huge crypto apps that have broken mainstream yet. Like we don't have a crypto game that's comparable to something like Roblox. Like all these other sectors in crypto aren't really that big in the normie world yet. So I do think this cycle is going to be the last one for retail to be like super early to crypto. And like if thinking through that, it's like this cycle may be longer than the other ones because as we get bigger and it gets more accepted, I think at some point in the future we're going to trade more similarly to how stocks trade, which is like we're not going to go minus 80% and the entire industry blows up. Like we'll pull back. Like we won't have these super big explosions, I don't think. So I do think we're going to get like a parabolic move this cycle, but I just think the bottom is going to be a lot higher than previous cycles, like significantly, just because of how many eyes we're going to have on crypto and how accepted it's going to be. So I've been doing comparables to like 2016, 2017, like that fractal, where it was more so like 2 years of an uptrend. But in 2016, 2017, we really didn't have that many altcoins and that many use cases for smart contract platforms. This cycle we do. So that's why I think it could be bigger in that way and like a 2-year type of uptrend at the same time that we have Bitcoin getting its spot ETF approved. That's kind of how I've been thinking about
I agree. I think this is the last cycle that's going to be called a quote unquote cycle. I think
it.
from now
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
it's just
That's
going
a
to
good way of
like,
putting it.
that's not to say like crypto is going to go down or anything. Like to your point, it's actually just going to be at a much higher floor. It'll be more accepted and volatility will decrease substantially. And we're just going to like slowly increase adoption over time after that. It's not going to be this radical thing where you're questioning your whole life after the thing crashes.
Yeah, please no more of that. Please no more of that.
Yeah.
Having a midlife crisis. Like, did I pick the wrong industry?
Yeah, dude, I've been questioning that for the last year or so. Finally, now I don't feel as bad.
Yeah, that's embarrassing though.
What about just high level macro, like for next year? I mean, I think a lot of people are talking about, oh no, we're gonna have a pullback, a correction, but then like you see these memes coming out, people waiting for like that 20% correction or whatever. It doesn't happen, and they just it just keeps mooning. Is this soft landing gonna actually happen? Like, how are you thinking about this stuff?
I think Q1 is going to be more sideways down, honestly, than Q4 has been. I think I want to say we're pretty close to getting to the like that soft landing that people have been talking about. A lot of people thought we were going to have a terrible recession this year, and we really didn't. Like the economy held up pretty well, and it hasn't really, even though we hiked a ton, it hasn't flowed through really to unemployment or like job losses or like slow spending really for people yet. And I think the worst of it you probably see in Q1. I think that's the way I'm thinking about it right now. So since we've ripped like what 5x plus a lot of alts 5x plus off the bottom, I think we're gonna get a rally, like a higher high. I don't think we touch like 50K, like 100 plus on Solana before we do the pullback. And I think probably like mid-January is when I'm thinking we like local top out, and then probably chop around in Q1 and then rip like the rest of the year. That's what I'm thinking right now. But honestly, like I didn't expect this year at all to be as good as it has. I know they've gotten inflation down to want to say like 3.4, 3.2, something like that %. So it's pretty close to their 2% target. And at the most recent FOMC, Powell has been a lot more dovish. Dovish is the word, right? Like dovish. As far as saying that they're probably not going to hike anymore. They're going to wait to see what happens, but it's like high likelihood now that rates have topped. So now it's just like, can the economy sustain rates being this high before they need to they cut them again? And they've projected, I want to say 3 rate cuts for next year, like in their dot plots. But the thing is, it's like, even if the economy did start breaking or stuff did start falling apart, they've said so many times that like we have the tools necessary to stimulate the economy if necessary. So everybody already knows, like if stuff starts going poorly, they're just going to turn the faucet on again. And that's why stuff trades the way that it does, because it's like we're kind of stuck in this loop where they only have 2 really levers that they can pull. And we know that they're going to pull that lever instead of letting us go into depression. So it's like either we get a really, really, really terrible like depression that breaks everything, or we keep going back in this like push and pull type of situation. So yeah, I think Q1 you'll probably get your pullback entries, but I think next year we break all-time highs. That's my call.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the market is so addicted, isn't it, to the liquidity and the funding that they get from the Fed.
Yep.
That it's like bad news is bullish, basically, because you just know you're going to get bailed out, and all they care about is just getting that liquidity injection.
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely mental.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you have any what are your spicy hot takes, would you say, for 2024, 2025? Anything, shocking, controversial, which you could see happening?
Yeah, let's see. I think my spiciest take is probably that like Ethereum mainnet DEX volume is under third by like end of the year. Yeah, under third. That's my call. And ETH BTC doesn't make a new high. Those are probably my two.
As in, there'll be two others doing more volume. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
At least two other blockchains. And do you want to name which ones?
Not naming which ones. I mean, one of them, Solana, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, that's a fair bet. So you subscribe to this barbell theory where it's going to be Bitcoin and then these really high throughput chains, and then the stuff in the middle like ETH is just going to not get as much love. I've been seeing that take a lot recently, and it kind of makes sense. Like,
I've had that thesis for a long time. Like even in early 22, I was writing about that. I think Cosmos is obviously underrated in how they approach the modular architecture. They were the ones who thought of that thesis before anybody else did. That was their entire game plan from the jump. It was like, we're going to make things very modular in how we design, not just like for users, but also from a developer standpoint. Like, we're going to be able to let you tweak things as you need to, like whatever, build your own specific app chain for whatever your use case is. And now you have Celestia, which is deployed on Cosmos. And now you have that modular thesis being applied to rollups. So I think Cosmos is going to be really, really, really interesting this cycle from a rollup perspective. That's probably one of my other I don't know what the word, like unexpected call. Yeah, hot take. Yeah, I think Cosmos rollups are going to be an interesting play. Like stuff like, what's it called? Sovereign Labs, I want to say it's called. They're the team that's working on building out SDKs for sovereign rollups to like build on top of Celestia, where sovereign rollups are rollups that don't need to settle to some other blockchain, like Arbitrum, Optimism, all those rollups settle on Ethereum. Sovereign rollups post data to Celestia, but they don't need to settle to another chain. So they're sovereign in their own right. Basically the closest thing to app-specific Cosmos chains in the Cosmos. And then you also have Dimension and Celestia, which are going to be working together. Dimension will be the modular settlement layer in the Cosmos, and they're working on building out SDKs for roll apps, they call them, which is like roll-up specific applications to build on Dimension, and then they'll use IBC for communication under the hood. So like IBC is really cool. Like I don't think most people know that you can actually build fraud proofs into IBC, which is pretty dope.
Yeah, because I often think it's conflated, really, the app chain thesis and then the L2 rollup thesis. And if you actually think, well, where are the apps themselves being built? I don't really see that many actually being built in the ETH ecosystem. It tends to be more in the Cosmos ecosystem, I'd say. So if the view is that there's going to be integrated chains and app chain thesis, then to me, that's bullish Cosmos, not necessarily bullish Ethereum at this point in time.
Yeah, I have the same thoughts. I think the reason that we have so many generalized L2s now is because of how badly ETH is at scaling. So you need these generalized L2s because literally like how bad of ETH is at scaling. I think in an ideal state, most of these rollups are literally application specific rollups. That's how I typically think about it. And then you have the L1s, integrated L1s on the other side where protocols just deploy and get access to all the other protocols on the chain at the same time. It's like the integrated and modular barbell. Yeah, I think that's how I'm approaching it. It's like if I have exposure to Solana, I got to figure out how to get exposure to the modular side, modular thesis also, because I have no idea which is going to win out long term. But I think they're diametrically opposed in a way that you need exposure to both of them.
No, that makes sense. Um, I guess kind of a closing topic or question, now that you're such a prominent figure in this space, you're probably dealing with a lot of people singing your praises, people, have negative thoughts. Like, how do you stay grounded through all of this? Because sure this is only going to ratchet up even more. It's only going to get more insane. More people are going to be online. But what are you doing to kind of keep a level head throughout this whole mania?
Yeah, I tell my friends all the time if I ever get cocky to please tell me, because please let me know if my personality changes. I think I'm typically pretty down to earth. I um try to be as best as I can. And like when your head gets big in trading when you hit a lot of trades back to back. Like, oh, I hit this and I hit this and I hit this and I hit this. And I made this much money. I did all this. But
Mhm.
if you do that and you also do it publicly in front of like a ton of people, and then all those people who are like, yo, I did this because you did this, and I made this much money, and my friends made this much money, like, oh, like you're the goat,
Yeah.
like all that makes it even crazier. So
Yeah.
so it's like leverage. It's like leverage on leverage. It's like double
Yeah.
leverage. It's like
It is.
it's like the social leverage on top of the actual money that you made from the trade. And sometimes the social leverage is weird because like I'll walk around. I walk around in New York now. Like I was out on Saturday. I'm at just a random club, and dude comes up to me like, "Yo, your answer from Twitter, like, yo, I fuck with you. Like, oh, I appreciate you. I made this much money off the Jito drop. Like, and I bought Solana at like 20. Like, people come up to me now in person in New York because they know me from Twitter, and I'm one of the people that has my face and everything docked, so people know what I look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's honestly very cool. Like, I'm glad that I've helped people. The downside of it is like when you're wrong, everybody's like, fuck you. So it's like, fuck you, I lost this much money because I thought you said this. And then it's like, well, damn, bro. I mean, I don't like, that's why I say, like, I try and tell people you don't want to copy trade anybody on crypto Twitter. You never want to do that. What's better
Yeah.
is to learn your process from the smartest people on crypto Twitter. So it's like, if you can learn how to take the trades from people who are taking the trades, then you don't need to copy trade anybody because you already know what to do. And that's why I also tell people to keep their portfolio separate from, like, keep your degen shit separate from your spot long-term position. So then it's like, even if somebody is whatever, they have Bitcoin, they have ETH, maybe they have Solana, maybe they have some Coinbase stock, and they're like holding that. It's hard to fuck up just holding stuff like that from the lows of a bear market unless you do something terribly, terribly wrong. Just close your eyes and never sell when stuff goes 5x, 10x plus. Like, it's hard to fuck up that side. So I tell people literally do that so you're not going to fuck up that part of your portfolio. And then all the other degen shit, like you're trying to catch all these rotations, bridging between 8 different chains, buying meme coins at 500K market cap. Like, don't lose your if you're going to lose your money on the degen shit. Don't fuck up the rest of your portfolio. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this next cycle is going to be weird. I got like 30K followers in the past month.
Yeah.
And that's just
insane.
like just the end of this year. It's not even 2024. So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you've been doing a great job. It's hard, man, because a lot of these guys on Twitter are anons, and you're kind of doing it
they're all
with your
anon.
reputation.
Like
It's
this,
like,
dude, like this summer, the amount of people who are calling me all types of crazy shit under every single post. I'm like,
yeah.
all I'm doing is saying I think Solana's gonna go up. I'm like, that's all I'm doing is that I think the gap is gonna close between Solana and ETH. And they're like, this guy's fucking retarded. Like, I'm like, Jesus, bro, like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? Oh,
My
but
God.
yeah, dude. And they're all anon too. So it's like, anybody who's met
Yo.
me in person, and I've met a lot of people from crypto Twitter now. So they see I'm like hella combative online just because of how people do go back and forth with people online. But if you meet me in person, I'm very chill. Like, I'm very, very chill. Even if you love Ethereum, I'm not gonna hit you. Like, like, I don't care. So it's always funny to see like the people who I know from crypto Twitter who know me in person. And I, like, whenever we meet up, they're like, yeah, dude, we have no idea why people are screaming at you on the internet.
Yeah.
It's funny, bro. It's funny.
Yeah, I don't get it either, man. It's crazy.
I
These
don't.
ladies, man,
Yeah,
the
these
worst.
my lady crew, bro.
Uh, but Z, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom. I think you've helped a lot of people in this space just learn how to your point, fish, right?
Yep.
Come up with a process, figure out why something should go up, think critically about this ecosystem. We need more people like you to help educate the masses and kind of build in public, share your process. I think that's super valuable. Not enough people are doing it. I think too many people hide behind, anonymous profiles, and it's a
Yeah.
lot easier to do that. But you're actually putting yourself out there, and we appreciate everything you do, man.
I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm trying, definitely trying, try my best. So,
Looking forward to a fun cycle. I think this will be
yeah,
this will be a crazy one.
if anything, it won't be boring.